I never imagined a simple act of affection could turn into the most shocking and devastating moment of my life. I had been away on a business trip for a week, exhausted and longing to see my wife, Kavya. Our marriage had its ups and downs like any other, but I trusted her completely, or so I thought. I decided to sneak home a day early to surprise her, imagining her smile, the warmth of her embrace, the normalcy of our life after a hectic week. When I arrived, I was filled with excitement and anticipation. I parked my car quietly and entered through the side door we rarely used, careful not to make a sound. The house was unusually quiet, which seemed odd but not alarming. As I moved toward the living room, I froze. There she was, my wife, Kavya, entangled with another man, completely unaware that I had arrived. Shock, disbelief, and fury hit me all at once. The man wasn't a stranger. He was someone she had been secretly seeing for months. My stomach churned, my heart raced, and for a moment I couldn't process the betrayal. I had trusted her, loved her, and yet here she was, betraying me in the most intimate way imaginable. I retreated quietly to process the moment. I had always prided myself on keeping my composure, and I knew that any rash action would play into their hands. But as I watched the footage of my own life being destroyed in real time, a plan began to form. Not one of impulsive violence, but immediate, precise revenge. First, I recorded everything. I didn't want to rely on memory, which could be clouded by rage or shock. I documented their encounter with my phone, capturing undeniable proof of the affair. Then I confronted Kavya, but not with shouting or tears. I waited for the perfect moment, ensuring that my approach was calm, calculated, and undeniable. When she finally noticed me, the look on her face was priceless. Shock, panic, and disbelief mixed into one expression. I can explain, she stammered, but her words were empty. The proof was right there in my hand, indisputable. I could see years of trust and shared life flash before my eyes, shattered in an instant. I didn't wait. I acted immediately. I made it clear that our marriage was over. I instructed the man to leave and never contact her again. Then I began the process of legal and personal separation. I filed for divorce swiftly, ensuring that Kavya would not have the chance to manipulate the situation or take advantage of me financially. But the revenge didn't stop at legal measures. I made sure that her deception would be exposed to those who mattered, friends, family, and colleagues who had once admired our relationship. Her carefully curated image of loyalty and love began to crumble before her eyes. She had spent months hiding her betrayal, and suddenly every lie, every secret, returned to her multiplied. What struck me most was the natural course of karma. The man she had been seeing turned out to be unreliable, abandoning her when things became inconvenient. Friends she had manipulated for cover began to distance themselves. Her social life, carefully maintained, began to unravel without any interference from me. Life itself became the agent of consequences, delivering justice far more effectively than I could have planned. Meanwhile, I rebuilt my life. I focused on work, personal growth, and emotional healing. I discovered resilience, patience, and the power of facing betrayal with clarity and composure. The pain was still there, raw and real, but it no longer controlled me. I had regained control over my own life, my own legacy, and my sense of dignity. Reflecting on the experience, I realized that revenge doesn't have to be loud or cruel. Sometimes simply exposing the truth, acting decisively, and letting natural consequences unfold is far more powerful. Kavya's choices had set the stage for her own downfall, and my role was merely to ensure that justice was undeniable and complete. By the time the dust settled, I had emerged stronger, wiser, and free. Kavya, on the other hand, faced the consequences of her betrayal fully: social isolation, personal humiliation, and the realization that deception carries its own inevitable punishment. My immediate revenge wasn't about anger. It was about reclaiming control, asserting boundaries, and making sure that trust once broken could never be manipulated again. In the end, I learned a hard truth. Betrayal reveals character, and action defines strength. I didn't just survive the shock of infidelity. I thrived in its aftermath, proving that composure, planning, and moral clarity are far more powerful than blind rage. The cameras, the evidence, and the decisive confrontation ensured that my life would continue on my terms, while hers unraveled under the weight of her own choices.